More Americans woke up to some extra cash in their bank accounts this morning. Today, the IRS deposited another batch of the stimulus checks President Biden authorized when he signed his American Rescue Plan into law earlier this month. Last week, more than 90 million people got their direct deposits, but millions are still waiting, and it could still take weeks for some waiting for paper checks or debit cards in the mail. Payments are capped by income and go up to $1,400 for individuals, $2,800 for married couples, and for families, an additional $1,400 per dependent. For more on how to make sure you get your payment if eligible and how to make the most of it, I'm joined by Washington Post personal finance columnist Michelle Singletary. She's also the author of the forthcoming book, What to Do with Your Money When Crisis Hits, a survival guide. It'll be out in May, and a great 10-part series about race and inequality in the Post called Sincerely Michelle. Michelle, I'm sincerely happy you are here. Good to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you too. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So what percentage roughly of Americans are eligible for these $1,400 checks, and what percentage have gotten them so far?
So about 80% of the American population makes enough that they qualify for the payments. And the first batch, about 90 million direct deposits have already gone out and should have hit people's bank accounts. And then another several million for checks and debit cards. There's a second batch that hit this week, about another 17 million for direct deposit that hit actually, today, Wednesday. And then about 20 million are in the mail, those checks and debit cards.
But some are not having them in the mail because they didn't file a tax return. And they didn't file a tax return because they don't have to because their income's so low. But if they don't, they're never going to see that check. So what do they do?
Yeah, there's actually two groups of people. So right now, there's quite a lot of fuss online and social media profiles on people who receive federal benefits like Social Security, SSI, veterans that weren't in those first two initial rollouts. And that's because the IRS is trying to get information from the Social Security Administration for 2021. Yeah. So, and then there's another group of people who, as you say, don't file taxes because they don't make enough. They're not required. And so there's a huge effort to reach those people so that they can file. So if anybody knows anyone who doesn't normally file and their income meets those limits, and they pretty much would if they don't have to file, they would meet it, you should really let them know. And they do need to file a 2020 federal return. Even if they're not getting any, even if they don't have any income, just put that in there. So the IRS has their information in its system.
And the most radical and arguably the most aggressive poverty-fighting device in this bill, according to many, is the increase in this child tax credit. Can you explain briefly how that works, Michelle?
So, it's an anti-poverty measure to give a boost to families with children. And so normally it's around $2,000 or so. And so now under at least the third package, that's going to increase to between $4,000 or $8,000 for families with, 1 or more children. And so what's unique about it under this stimulus plan is that normally they would file their taxes next year for 2021 and get a lump sum payment based on the number of children they have if they meet the income levels. And so because so many people have lost their jobs and there's, obviously still a lot of people struggling because of COVID-19, they're going to deliver those payments this year and on a periodic basis. Now, we're hoping it'll be monthly, but at least it'll be a regular payment from July until the end of the year so that families can get this money in their budget now when they need it the most.
And this is the provision that the experts like you are saying is going to reduce child poverty. Almost saying the words is incredible. 50%. And we spoke to Richie Neal, the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, on the radio a week or two ago. His hope, and I know the hope of the president, is to become a permanent fixture of what this government does for its people. And we should also say the criterion for eligibility, who's a dependent, age levels, a lot of that is expanded, and people should check that out so that they don't lose out. Michelle, I've been reading you a long time. I've been reading your stuff a long time. You did a series that was a different direction for you, Sincerely Michelle. And the header, it was a 10-part series in which you said you got personal about misconceptions involving race. Why'd you decide to do it?
Well, like so many people, I was just disheartened by a lot of the police brutality against African American men and women. And after the death of George Floyd and the Breonna Taylor and so many others, I just felt like I had to speak out because it's not just them. You know, there's still a lot of systemic racism. And in America, we really don't want to admit that. And honestly, there are a lot of African Americans who don't want to talk about race because there's a big risk when you talk about race of being labeled like the angry Black woman or something to that extent. But at times you just can't stay silent. And I wanted to talk about my road, the things that happened to me. And I did everything you're supposed to do. I went to college. I've been married for 30 years. I had my kids in marriage. I mean, all the right things. And I still face discrimination. You know, on the workplace and people assuming things about me just because of the color of my skin. And I wanted to open up a conversation. I don't want people to feel guilty. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. But we have got to have some candid conversations about race. And in my case, I wanted to talk about race and money.
What kind of response did you get to this?
You're going to make me cry.
Well, that's my answer, I think.
Yeah.
What is the answer?
You know, I have to say, I knew that I'd get some pushback. You know that when you write about race, you know it. But the things that people said to me here in 2020, it just broke my heart. Now, there are some people who, you know, they're going to say those nasty things and they're going to call you the N-word and things like that. But there were some people, right, and they would tell me what they do for a living and where they live and things like that. And you're thinking, these are educated people. These are people who should know better, who, you know, managers. And I mean, I was astounded at the things that they said to me. But I would have to also say that the overwhelming majority of comments from white folks, you know, white people were just like, I did not know this. I'm so glad you opened up my eyes. I was doing things and did not realize the impact of what I was doing. And that lifted my spirit just at times where I'd get those very hateful, racist emails and correspondence from people.
I'm one of those white guys whose eyes were open, by the way, and I can't tell you how much I loved your writing about your grandmother. That was just so beautiful. I can't even tell you. So before you go, in addition to my learning a lot from your column long before I met you, and you're a regular now on our radio show, which we love every couple of weeks, you've altered my TV viewing habits as well. I want to show you a clip from something that I never even heard of before you. Here it is.
We want a house. I mean, that's the smart decision to make. But
Evan, you can just say it. Just say it.
I want our wedding to be the best wedding of all the ones that we've been to.
How do we pick between the day that we deserve and we want and the future?
I blame you. I can't believe I am watching Mortgage or Marriage or Marriage or Mortgage or whatever the hell it's called on Netflix. A couple gets $35,000. People from each, I was going to say industry, marriage or the housing industry, urge them to do that thing. Big wedding, serious down payment on a house. What's your advice to the couples who are participants in that misguided adventure?
Yeah, it's a Netflix series called Mortgage or Marriage or Mortgage. And so couples who have saved up to $35,000, so it's their own money. They've saved up to $35,000.
Right, I'm sorry, right.
And so, no, that's quite all right. And so there's a realtor and a wedding planner. And so they both kind of compete for their business. And then the whole point is, are they going to choose basically a party, the reception, or are you going to buy or use that money for a down payment on a home? And when I heard the pitch first, I was like, oh, come on. How can you even have this conversation? Of course you pick the mortgage. And no, all things being equal, that you can afford the payments and so forth. And it was, I was stunned, just stunned at the people who decided to have this big wedding and the people who decided to, invest in their future with a mortgage and a home. And at times I wanted to just throw my shoe at the television. But what I liked about the series is that it would help facilitate conversations about good decision making. And most people make financial mistakes because they don't have good decision making skills. And so that's what made me so fascinated by this show. And thankfully I'm so cheap because I didn't throw my shoe at the TV because I didn't want to break it.
And I want you to know, because of you, I'm never going to get those hours back, Michelle Singletary. It's great to see you, Michelle. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.